Have you ever met someone you simply couldn't trust, though they did nothing wrong? A smile at the right moment, an unwavering gaze, a perfectly polite word, and yet something sends a chill down your spine as if instinct is whispering, something isn't right. We don't fear pretense. We fear truth twisted. We fear a gaze that sees our wounds and chooses to press harder. This world isn't lacking in kindness, but far too many wear kindness as a mask for what they don't want you to see. Some people don't need to shout to manipulate you. They only need silence at the right moment, softness at the right angle, and they make you believe it's sincerity. But behind every gesture lies an intention. And what you feel but cannot explain is your intuition speaking before reason catches up. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Learn to see others clearly so your mind no longer needs to judge. Once you truly see, you will no longer be surprised." In today's video, we will peel back each layer of the human mask, not to condemn, not to control, but to live with a quiet power, to see clearly and never let anyone disturb your peace again. 1. The mask is not to deceive, but to survive. No one is born wearing a mask. Every person was once a child innocently sincere, ready to believe in promises, easily moved to tears by pain, and unaware of how to hide their feelings. But life doesn't let us keep that innocence forever. With every disappointment, every unexpected wound, every moment when honesty was mistaken for weakness, people learn to build a layer of protection. That layer isn't meant to deceive others. It's simply a mechanism of survival. Some learn to stay silent when in pain. Some turn humor into armor to avoid being hurt. Some are skilled in social graces, always smiling, yet their eyes never truly connect. And we call that fake. But if you look deeper, you'll see it's not fake. It's the part of them they no longer dare to show because the last time they did, it crushed them. We often blame others for lacking authenticity, yet we forget they may have once been destroyed by their own sincerity. No one wears a mask just to manipulate. Most wear it to cover a wound that never healed. And over time, the mask fuses with the skin to the point where even they forget what their real face once looked like. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A person is not only what they reveal, but also what they try to conceal." We tend to judge others by their words, their gestures, their appearance. But what we should observe is what they avoid. The pause in the middle of a story. The subtle shift in their gaze when you touch a memory they'd rather forget. The mask isn't just something they put up so you won't see them clearly. It's also something they use to avoid seeing themselves. And that's the deepest paradox. People wear masks not to hide from you, but to protect themselves from being tormented by their own truths. Once you realize this, you no longer get angry when someone isn't fully honest. You no longer try to tear off their mask because you understand pulling too hard might make them bleed. Some shells are glued to fear. And the only way to truly see someone is to stand still long enough, patiently enough, for them to remove it themselves. Understanding someone's mask means not being fooled by performance. But understanding why they wear the mask, that's how you stop reacting with hurt or anger. The wise don't use their insight to control others. They use it to keep their own hearts from turning into battlegrounds. Because peace doesn't come from knowing who others are. It comes from not letting them decide who you become. 2. What they hate about you is what they reject in themselves. Some people never speak ill of you directly, yet their eyes quietly drain the trust you once had. Some criticisms may sound fair, even wear the disguise of constructive feedback, but beneath them is an energy that makes you feel small, scrutinized, not enough. The strange thing is, you did nothing wrong. You were simply being yourself, and that alone made others uncomfortable. They don't hate you because you hurt them. They hate you because your existence disrupts the lies they tell themselves. People rarely hate for clear reasons. Often they hate because you embody a part they've long rejected. You live honestly, they wear a mask. You speak truth, they've learned to stay silent just to survive. You're free, they're trapped in a role. And they hate you not because you're wrong, but because you're a living reflection of who they once wished to become, but gave up on. We all carry parts of ourselves we feel ashamed of. A flash of anger, a slice of weakness, a craving for recognition, a memory of being broken. When we're afraid to face those parts, we start to resent those who expose them by how they live. And then we unleash judgment not to help, but to regain a sense of control. But truly, it's just an inner battle projected onto someone else. Seneca once wrote, "What we judge in others is often a reflection of ourselves." That's truer than you think. Those who hate bluntness are often those who once suffered from not speaking their truth. Those who resent confidence are usually those who lost trust in themselves. Those who despise resolve are often the ones easily swayed. And those who mock freedom are the ones who never broke free. When someone cannot accept you, look deeper into what they're attacking. They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to the part of themselves they can't control. Your presence forces them to confront what they refuse to admit. And instead of healing, they choose to strike. Not because you're wrong, but because they can't bear the light you unknowingly carry. Don't react. Don't rush to explain. Don't defend yourself by becoming like them. One who knows themselves never needs to shrink to gain approval. You are not obligated to soothe someone's insecurity just because you live more truthfully. Respect does not come from fitting in. It comes from daring to show up whole, even when that makes others uncomfortable. And when someone hates you for no reason, remember, that reason may lie so deep within them, even they can't see it. It's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix them. Your only responsibility is not to let their judgment become a mirror that distorts who you are. Because in the end, the one trapped is not you, it's them, endlessly fleeing from the most honest part of themselves. 3. Silence reveals what words try to hide. Words can be rehearsed, but silence cannot. People can learn how to speak well, to say the right things, to sound kind, but no one is fast enough to mask the sudden silence when a forbidden question hits. That's the moment instinct speaks before reason. And sometimes the most trustworthy thing isn't what's said, but the brief pause they didn't mean to show. You cannot truly understand someone just by listening to what they say, because words always come with intention, selection, and control. But silence cannot be faked. That pause when faced with truth, the eyes that dodge a topic, the nod that arrives a beat too late, these are the cracks where truth leaks through. The best liar isn't the one who fabricates stories, but the one who evades them skillfully. And silence is the most effective evasion because it leaves no trace. We live in an age where everyone is trying to speak beautifully. Yet the more words, the less sincerity. The clearer the speech, the foggier the intention. What's most trustworthy isn't what they tell you about themselves, it's what they never bring up, not what they show, but what they avoid. Truth doesn't live in affirmation, it hides in omission. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "Don't trust what people say about themselves, observe what they remain silent about." When speaking of others, silence is the soul's deepest reflex. It has no tone to manipulate, no script to control. That's why those who have been deeply hurt become skilled at reading people. They've learned to listen to the gaps, not the sound. Think back to the last time you felt uneasy during a conversation. Not because someone insulted you, not because they said something cruel, but because something wasn't said. An unusual quiet when you opened up. A deliberate subject change when you mentioned boundaries. A hollow space in between words that sounded perfect. That feeling didn't deceive you. It was the reaction of a wounded mind recognizing the fracture beneath the polished surface. You don't always need to ask more to understand better. Sometimes, what reveals a person is what they never speak of. The name never mentioned, the story always left unfinished. The memory cut from the narrative. And most of all, the silence when you show your vulnerability, it tells you that you don't have a place in their heart. Silence is the most honest mirror of the soul. And once you learn to hear it, you won't be fooled by sweet words. You don't need to force confessions. Just calmly observe the asymmetry between what they say and what they avoid. And when that gap becomes too wide, you'll know. They're not hiding the truth, they simply lack the courage to face it. When that happens, there's no need to react, no need to be angry. Just step back and keep the truth for yourself. 4. The loudest voice of morality often belongs to the one hiding guilt. Those who are truly moral don't need to preach. They quietly live within their principles, wearing them like a silent presence that needs no validation. But in today's society, the loudest voices declaring what's right, just, and ethical often come from those who are hiding something. They do not speak to defend truth. They speak to drown out what they cannot bear in silence. And what they are feeling isn't responsibility, it's guilt. A person can carry two faces and feel no conflict. One is the righteous face they show the world, and the other is wounded, selfish, conflicted, hidden in moments when no one is watching. But deceit isn't just in behavior. It lies in the motive behind the display of virtue. When someone has to preach excessively about conscience, it's often because they're trying to soothe an unacknowledged wound inside. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nobility doesn't need to be declared, because true values don't seek applause. They stand firm in silence, like a stone pillar in a storm. But those who are fragile inside, those breaking apart, often need noise to drown out the fear of being exposed. That noise may come in the form of moral sermons, declarations of dignity, or harsh judgments against anyone who doesn't meet the standards they impose. The greatest danger isn't the obviously wicked. It's the one pretending to be good so thoroughly they believe it themselves. They don't see their manipulation because they believe they're saving others. They don't see their control because they think they're guiding. And so, in the name of righteousness, they begin to judge, impose, and suppress anyone different. They don't realize their rigidity is a cover for an ego on the verge of collapse. Be cautious of those who seem perfect, because the real human being is never perfect. They will stumble, feel weak, say the wrong things, make mistakes. Humility is in admitting that, not hiding it beneath a polished facade. The more someone needs to appear moral, the less they've made peace with past mistakes. And instead of facing them, they turn the world into a place for punishing others as if that's how they'll earn forgiveness from themselves. Some people live by principles without demanding others do the same. They understand morality as a quiet journey. And if someone is truly kind, you'll feel it in the way they listen, in how they treat the vulnerable, in the silent compassion they extend, not in the slogans floating in their words. When you see someone enraged by others' lack of morality, ask yourself, are they protecting something or running from it? When someone keeps pointing out others' flaws, observe whether they've ever forgiven themselves. Because most of what we condemn in others is what we've never accepted in ourselves. And then you'll understand, the most powerful moral voice doesn't come from the mouth. It comes from the silence of a steadfast life. No grandstanding, no self-defense, no manipulation to convert others. Just walking quietly and letting character leave its own footprint. 5. Those who boast about control are the ones afraid of losing everything. There's a type of person who always needs you to know they're in control. They emphasize that everything is in their hands, that they know what's going on, that they need no help. They steer every conversation, have the final word in every debate. But behind that confidence lies a growing fear, the fear that if they don't grip everything tightly, it will all collapse. The more powerless someone feels inside, the more they need control on the outside. They need to be sure no one leaves them, no one surpasses them, nothing happens without their permission, because if they lose control, they believe they themselves will disappear. Control becomes armor, but it's not strength. It's the defense of a soul terrified of being hurt again. Epictetus once said, "The free man is the one who is not compelled to control anything except his own mind." But for many, this feels impossibly distant. They've never been taught that peace doesn't come from everything going as planned. It comes from not falling apart when plans fail. Those obsessed with power and control are often the children who grew up in chaos, where any misstep led to loss, and no one came to save them unless they saved themselves. So when they grow up, they carry an unspoken vow. From now on, nothing will slip out of my hands. They control others' time, others' emotions, others' choices, not because they're tyrants, but because they fear that if they let others be free, they'll be abandoned. But the paradox is control itself pushes people away. No one wants to live in a cage, even if it's gilded with love or responsibility. The truly strong don't need everything under control. They understand life is unpredictable, and maturity is in knowing when to let go, not in gripping so hard that it suffocates. When you see someone needing to prove they're in charge, quietly ask, what are they trying to hold on to that's already slipping away? Perhaps it's a crumbling relationship. Perhaps it's a collapsing self-image. Perhaps it's a deep insecurity they never dared to name. Control isn't always wrong, but when it comes with boasting, with force, with a lack of listening, it signals a fragile ego using power to prop up what it cannot face. And when you're the one being controlled, remember, it's not because you're weak, but because they're too weak to let you be free without feeling threatened. It's not because you're wrong, but because your independence is proof of something they lost. Peace doesn't need to be flaunted. Self-mastery doesn't need to dominate. The truly strong need nothing in their grasp because they know the most important thing is keeping themselves. And sometimes, real power lies not in controlling others, but in not letting fear control you. 6. Fake confidence is a mask for unforgiven guilt. There are people who walk into a room and immediately draw every gaze. They speak as if doubt never touches them. They move as if every space belongs to them. Their stories are sharp, funny, magnetic. Everyone thinks, this person is incredibly confident. But if you watch just a bit longer, you'll notice something strange. They never stop. They can't sit in silence for too long. They don't let you hold eye contact for too long. And they always need to be doing something to avoid being alone with themselves. True confidence doesn't need to be proven. It pulses like a steady heartbeat, no drama, no noise, no fear. But confidence performed like a show is often a sign of something being suppressed. Some people become talkative, not because they have much to say, but because they can't bear being seen in silence. Some always speak of victories, goals, achievements, but never of what they abandoned to gain them. Guilt doesn't always show up in tears or regret. Sometimes it wears the mask of success. Sometimes it hides inside exaggerated confidence. There are wounds that never bleed, but they distort how someone relates to the world. Those who haven't forgiven themselves can't sit still. They stay busy becoming someone, doing something, to outrun the part of their memory they dare not face. They believe if they shine brightly enough, become strong enough, unique enough, they'll be forgiven. But forgiveness doesn't come from outside eyes. It comes when you dare to sit alone in the dark and no longer want to run. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You don't need to declare what you are. Live as if you already are it." But those who haven't accepted their flaws can't live quietly. They must speak. They must prove. They must be acknowledged because inside, no belief truly holds. And if you stay near that kind of person long enough, you'll sense the invisible distance between who they portray and who they spend a lifetime trying to outrun. Not everyone who seems confident is pretending. But if something feels off, if the brilliance feels too rehearsed, too intentional, too theatrical, chances are you're witnessing someone who has never been forgiven. Not by others, but by themselves. They are the prisoner of the version they once despised and the architect of a version they'll never allow themselves to fully inhabit. The truly strong don't rush to speak of themselves. They listen. They let others speak of them if needed. They can sit quietly in a room, untouched by attention without losing their worth. But those who haven't forgiven themselves always need to do something to be seen. Not because they're arrogant, but because they're desperate. And when someone makes you feel small just because they shine so brightly, remember, artificial light always needs electricity. When that power runs out, what's left is an empty room. But those who shine from within, they don't need to illuminate others to exist. They have already forgiven themselves, and so they no longer need to play a part. 7. Lives driven by childhood without knowing it. Some people enter life appearing strong, rational, and in control of everything. They plan everything meticulously, handle situations quickly, and rarely let emotions shake them. They believe they've grown up, that they are independent, free, no longer reliant on anyone. But deep down, those seemingly rational decisions are rooted in an old fear, something that happened when they were too young to name it. And their life, unknowingly, is still being steered by an inner child, a child who was never healed. Childhood doesn't pass like a fading memory. It stays in the body, in our reflexes, in the way we love, get angry, keep distance, or react when someone leaves. A child who had to please adults to be loved will grow up not knowing how to say no without feeling guilty. A child who is constantly compared will grow up needing to surpass others to feel worthy. A child who was abandoned will grow up with a compulsion to control, not because they like possession, but because they fear being forgotten once again. Seneca once wrote, "No one is truly free until they understand the origin of their own wounds." But society teaches us to forget, to overcome, to be strong. No one teaches us to sit down and ask, why do I react this way? Why do I always choose the same type of person? Why do I succeed yet still feel unfulfilled? Why can a small rejection make me feel invisible? No one teaches us to look back, so we continue living as if the past has no bearing on the present, even though every choice we make is guided by what's never been untangled. Some people are cold because they were once neglected. Some are quick to anger because they were ignored. Some are overly generous because they never felt lovable. And some always take on the role of the strong one because deep inside they fear no one will stay if they show weakness. That child doesn't disappear with time. It only learns how to hide behind the label of adulthood. And when left unheard, it begins to steer your biggest decisions. career, boundaries, forgiveness, and even how you treat yourself. When you understand this, you no longer get angry with others for being unpleasant, cold, stubborn, or controlling. You start to see what the child within them is trying to say through their silence. You stop reacting and begin observing, not to forgive, but to stop getting caught in the game of wounds. Because if you don't know what's driving you, you'll think you're in control of your life, when in truth, you're just reenacting the past in a different form. And then you'll realize, maturity isn't about escaping your childhood, but returning to it, embracing that child, and telling them they no longer have to control everything. You can now walk on your own, with no need to prove anything to anyone, and no longer fearing abandonment just for being yourself. 8. Exaggeration is the cry for help of an insecure ego. The modern world isn't lacking people who speak louder, tell more, or brag constantly. They walk into a room and instantly make their presence known through words, volume, and meticulously crafted stories. Stories of victories, of pain, of extraordinary success or unmatched suffering. They don't converse, they perform. They don't connect, they await validation. But behind all that exaggeration lies something very small, very fragile, that they don't dare to say. I'm afraid that if I'm not impressive enough, I won't be heard. No one exaggerates because they have too much. They do it because they feel a lack of attention, a lack of value, a lack of someone who ever paused long enough to truly see them. And because they lack, they overcompensate. They stretch the truth so they won't fade into the crowd. They present superiority to mask their sense of inadequacy. They add color to every memory, every achievement, every relationship, because they believe that if they told the truth, it would be too ordinary for anyone to care. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "The weaker the ego, the greater the need for attention." When someone is at peace with themselves, they don't need to exaggerate. They don't need to double the story to feel worthy. They don't need to wear the label of victim or hero just to enter someone's life. But when the insecure ego speaks, it doesn't cry through pain, it cries through showmanship. It doesn't ask for love. Humbly, it demands admiration, recognition, and applause, even if all of it is built on illusion. Exaggeration is the mask of a loneliness that has never been named. The one who says, "I've gone through more than anyone," is often the one who has never been truly heard. The one who says, "No one understands me," is often the one who's been ignored for so long. They believe only extreme uniqueness can capture attention. But the tragedy is the more they try to stand out, the more they're seen as annoying. The more they talk, the more they're doubted. And the more they seek love, the lonelier they feel. If you've ever felt annoyed by someone who constantly boasts, remember, that display isn't for you to believe, it's for them to feel confident. They're not chasing admiration, they're longing for a nod of empathy. But they don't know how to ask for it. And in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the one who doesn't know how to be silent will forever drown in their own noise. Truth doesn't need to be exaggerated. A person with depth doesn't need to perform, and one who knows their worth doesn't need to keep repeating it. Sometimes, the most magnetic thing about you is your ability to tell a simple story in a calm voice and let the silence between sentences say the rest. 9. Envy always wears the mask of attack, but it's really longing. Not everyone who attacks you hates you, and not everyone who criticizes you truly wants you gone. Many of them, without realizing it, are looking at you as a mirror, reflecting a part they've lost in themselves. They don't want you to suffer, they want to feel less inferior. But because they don't know how to handle admiration, they turn it into a preemptive strike. Because they lack the courage to say, "I wish I were like you." They choose to say, "Who do you think you are?" Envy is a sharp emotion. It arrives quietly, but rarely stays still. It needs to be explained, justified, disguised with moral or emotional reasons that sound reasonable. So people begin to find faults in you, reinterpret your success as a string of luck, and diminish you to feel taller. But if you look closer, you'll see behind their words a lost gaze. They want what you have, but can't admit they missed their chance to earn it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "We are angry at others because they awaken the part in us we have abandoned." Envy doesn't live in the other. It lives in the wound within us. People don't envy what you have. They envy what they once wanted but didn't dare to keep. It's not because you're happy, it's because your happiness forces them to face the nameless pain they've been avoiding. And it's not because you're better than them, it's because you are the version they convinced themselves they didn't need to become. Some attacks come without knives, only tones. Some criticisms don't seem malicious, but are timed just right to make you doubt yourself. That's how people punish your presence when your presence makes them feel not enough, not right, not worthy. But instead of turning inward and asking what in them is being awakened, they turn outward to find someone else to bear what they refuse to confront. And if you don't understand this, you'll think you've done something wrong. You'll think you should shrink, stay silent, dim yourself so others can breathe easier. But the truth is, it's not your fault for living authentically. You become a target because you dared to do what many are too afraid to try. And sometimes, the greatest kindness isn't to stay quiet, so others feel less uncomfortable. It's to stand firm in your light, so someone out there realizes they can step out of the dark too. Envy is a silent cry for help. It's the way a soul searches for a lost identity, but doesn't know where to begin. And instead of fighting back, you only need to understand. Understand so you don't respond with bitterness. Understand so you don't shrink. Understand so you know when to set boundaries, because in the end, you don't need them to like you. You only need to not let their envy turn you into a distorted version of yourself. 10. Behavior never lies. It's a repeated confession. People can say whatever they want. They can claim they've changed, that they've learned, that they regret, that they love, that they respect. They can speak the most beautiful words, write the longest messages, and use the most sincere tones. But no matter how polished the words may be, behavior remains the final truth. Because behavior never lies. It is the part that consciousness cannot interfere with. It is where true nature is revealed when no one thinks they're being watched. A person can apologize with the sweetest mouth, but if they continue the same behavior, that apology is merely a delay of consequences. A person can promise they've changed, but if, when you're not looking, they act exactly the same, then that promise is just a mask, not a commitment. And that is why many suffer not because they aren't loved, but because they trusted words instead of observing actions. Seneca once wrote, "Character is not found in words, but in habits." Habits are repeated reflexes that need no performance. They require no preparation. They have no script. They are how someone treats you when they want nothing from you, how they behave toward the weak when no one is watching. They are the unconscious choices made again and again, not a one-time mistake, but a hidden pattern masked by occasional kindness. The most dangerous person isn't the one who loses control of their behavior, but the one who adjusts their words to hide it. They know exactly what to say to keep you around. They know when to admit fault, when to show remorse, when to go silent so you'll fill that silence with hope. But in the end, what they cannot hide is how they live. And if you are still enough, clear enough, you'll see. Their behavior always tells the same truth even when their mouth says the opposite. The person who once hurt you isn't necessarily evil. But if they repeat it, the hurt is no longer an accident. It's the outcome of an unchanged nature. And you don't need to be angry to walk away. You only need to believe what you see. Because a genuine apology will come with change. Real love will come with consistent kindness, without reminders. And someone worthy is someone who never makes you wonder which version of them you'll get today. Don't excuse others by blaming their behavior on circumstances. Circumstances can change, but if behavior doesn't, then the issue isn't the situation, it's the person. Don't lull yourself with lines like, "But they were once so good, they're trying." Everyone has tired days. Because the truth is this: people repeat what they choose, not what they do by accident. And if you ever feel torn between someone's words and what their actions make you feel, choose their actions. Because that is the confession that cannot be edited. It is the voice with no tone, no lie. It is the most honest version of a person even when they didn't mean to speak it. I used to trust words more than behavior. I used to hold on to those who hurt me just because they knew how to say the things I needed to hear. I used to think someone had changed just because they cried, because they apologized, because they said, "I didn't mean to." But then I realized something important: people may lie unintentionally, but they can't repeat the same behavior unintentionally. And when someone hurts you a second time, it's no longer a mistake, it's a choice. I've learned to observe more than listen. To look at behavior, not just explanations. To notice the silence, not just the smooth words. And I've realized, sometimes strength doesn't lie in forgiving or trying to understand. It lies in walking away without needing another apology. Peace doesn't come from others changing. It comes the moment you no longer need them to change in order for you to be happy. If you found value in what you just heard, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future philosophical insights where we continue to explore human nature with the awareness and stillness of a Stoic mind. Because sometimes, what makes you untouchable isn't the power you display, but the clarity you no longer need to speak out loud. Be the one who sees, not just the one who hears. Be the quiet one, but never the blind one. See you in the next video.